What we're going to do this evening is we're going to provide you with a presentation and give you an update on where we're at with our master plan. This is a very comprehensive program that entails a lot of information that eventually is going to be filtered out, and as a result of that, we're going to do a second document, or the second half of the exercise, which will be an action plan. One of the major purposes of this program is to help us define or improve on our workforce housing ordinance that we have in place. As you recall, that ordinance was put on moratorium about 5-6 months ago. And once we're done with the housing master plan and the recommendations, we'll go back to that ordinance and then update the workforce housing program. With that, I'm going to go ahead and pass the presentation to Mr. Evan Johnson, who's going to walk you through it. There's a presentation here. Everything is going to be put on our website. We have a whole section for the housing master plan, as well as the boards that you see to my left and in the back. And so he's going to walk you through each of the boards as well as the result of our presentation. I think this is going to be one presentation we're having tonight, right? We'll be having this.
Yeah, if we get more people later, we can do it again.
Okay, very
If
good.
not, no problem. I
That's
heard
fantastic.
traffic was bad tonight, so
Okay, very good.
maybe people will show up.
All right, very good. So,
On the housing master plan, and I wanted to ask Julian, at what point will the deliverable be available on the website? Just for, like, after staff edits?
Right.
Revised? Okay, so we do have he mentioned everything going on the website. There is a draft deliverable that we're basically covering some of that tonight, and that'll be put on the website after staff has a round of edits and we get it cleaned up. We'll put it up, so you can look at that as well. But I'm going to do like the executive summary version of that memorandum and talk a little bit about what we found in our research and what the project is really about. And then Sylvia here afterwards, if you want to hang out and talk about each of the boards. She's the one in charge of all the board discussion this evening. So I'll get you through the presentation pretty quick. So the purpose of the housing master plan, as Julian said, was really, it's to look at housing overall and to update data collection related to housing. The city of Doral has a comprehensive plan, has a housing element, it's required by state law. We're trying to help update some of that data that's in there as far as how many units you have, the types of units, different data sets, what the demographics look like, those types of things. But we're focusing an action plan, which is my next piece of this project, on workforce housing. And we can talk a little bit about what workforce housing means. But generally, it's a range of salaries right around your median income. So your medians, you're right in the middle of your income for all your working population. This is a range right around that median that's considered workforce generally. And so it's about making sure that those folks can find and have housing within the community you're in. So we're focused on that, particularly in the second phase, identifying an action plan. The city, as is evidenced by their workforce housing density bonus program, which is what we're looking to modify or update and assess, they really look to facilitate public and private involvement. So developers, property management, as well as the city itself, trying to find ways to facilitate creating new units that can be considered workforce. So this really is seen as a public-private partnership approach. Want to propose policies to address these workforce housing and related local housing issues. This could be policy, this could be regulations, maybe requirements, incentives, which is how the current ordinance is structured. We really haven't developed any recommendations yet, we're working on it, but I'll talk a little bit about how we're gathering information to do that. So as Julia mentioned, in 2016, the city adopted a workforce housing density bonus program. Familiar with it, everybody? Maybe a little bit? All right. I won't go into detail. We can talk after the presentation in detail, but generally it's a program that was designed to, your future land use in the community allows you to build a certain amount of units, right? So if I have a, high residential mixed use, I'm allowed to build whatever. This program would say, if you want to build more, you can, but you have to provide some units protected for workforce. And they put those specific income requirements in there. So that's generally how it works. Be glad to talk to more detail about it. As I mentioned, it's basically 65% to 140% of the area median income. Area median income is it's Miami-Dade County. So it includes all the jurisdictions, all the cities within Miami-Dade, as well as the county itself. So it comes out a bit lower than what is actually in Doral, but that is a standard that is used. And then in May of this year, there was a moratorium put on the workforce housing program to basically do the study, to update the data, to actually look at very specific Doral examples, to come up with some. What was that?
How much that area?
Oh, we'll get there. Don't have to tell you if you live and work in this area. The population's growing. We're expecting upwards of 103,000 people by 2030. Just to put that in context, we're at 53. Wait. Beaver says 62. So we're at 62 right now. But the census estimate was about 53,000 people. So here's some information on median income. We always like to look at your neighbors when we're looking at any community. How do you fit within the region and the context? The median income comparison, now this is where it gets complicated. I'm glad to talk to you all about the details. This is median income for each individual city. This is the Kendall area. CDP is a census term. That's the area. So you can see the range there. It's also in your handouts, just in case you're wondering. You don't have to take pictures of it. And show you how Doral compares to them, one of the higher ones within the region. Now, Doral has a huge employment population. There's something on the order of 80,000 people who work in Doral. And that, given the size of the population itself, that's pretty rare to have that large of an employment base and a small population like this. But 73,000 of those people come into town every day. So they don't live here, they work here. And only 15,000 leave to go work somewhere else. So 15,000 people who live, 14,000 and change who live here leave, most of them go to Miami to work every day. And then 73,000 almost come in every day to work. Most of those come from either Miami or Hialeah. And then you've got about 5,000 people who live and work in Doral, according to the census. That's it. Out of 55 or 60 plus thousand people, you've got 5,000 people who actually live and work in this community every day. So you see that creates traffic, that creates, there's obviously a demand for housing when you have that many people coming to work in your community every day. But as we all know, housing's very expensive here. This is just another chart from the same analysis, which is showing that Hialeah and Miami are really your two largest populations that come into the city every day, into Doral every day.
Miami?
Yes, that's the city. That's the city of.
City of Miami.
Yes, yes, yes. As far as we looked at the workforce as part of this analysis, we're trying to look at, so here's 80,000 employees. This gives you a breakdown of what they're all in. The largest sectors are going to be wholesale trade, transportation, warehousing, airport related stuff, which would be expected in this area. But this right here is the interesting one. Of the people who work in Doral, 62% of them are making less than $40,000 in net salary. So of this whole population that works here, which is about 80,000 plus people, 62% make 40,000 or less for their jobs. So that kind of shows you that big difference in, who can live here and who works here and that disparity. And that's one of the things we want to talk about with this study, is to really identify, crunch the numbers and say, okay, well, what does this mean and where do we want to go? We've looked at the housing stock here in Doral. The vast majority, since 2000, the city has basically been built since 2000. So over half of it has units that are newer than the year 2000. So that is an issue when it comes to if you're not building them to be affordable, because a lot of times affordable housing tends to be the housing that is older. It becomes, somebody buys it or sells it and then they move on, and it's, an older house becomes more affordable over time sometimes. So, but these units, we have a huge amount of new units in the community now. 52.6% of all apartments in the city have been built since 2000. 48.9% of all single family has been built since then. And then the townhomes, which if you look at the townhomes, they tend to be bigger, so it kind of shows that they're newer. Most of those are newer. Unit sizes have been increasing. That's not just Doral, that's everywhere. That's building new units. But again, it becomes an issue of affordability. The bigger the units get over time, then it becomes harder and harder to have, it costs more money to build a bigger unit. Not per square foot, but just overall. So we've mapped all these again, and we've identified where all the condos and everything is located. As you can see, there's a big north-south divide. All your industrial employment down to the south, and your residential to the north. We've also looked at where developments are coming in. So there is a huge amount of development that has been approved and planned in the city of Doral over the last several years. And in the next 5 years, this is generally what is planned to be built within the next 5 years as far as number of units. So we're talking 12,700 units potentially in the next 5 years. And that could be 5 to 7, that could be 7, 8. But generally, that's that time frame. Yes, ma'am. There we go. Oh, and here's a map showing you some of those locations of all the projects. So, and actually that map is right there, one of these boards as well. There it is in the back. So you can actually look on the map in the back as well. So in the analysis that we've done so far, in the memo and the draft that Julian is currently looking at, we looked at 2 different types of median income in the city of Doral. And the reason we did this is because there is an area median income, which is typically what is used in the world of affordable housing. And that, again, looks at the whole area. So that looks at the county, that looks at the city of Miami, that looks at Hialeah, and that comes up with one number. And then there's the actual median income of people who live in Doral. And so we wanted to look at both of them just to see if somebody is making that amount of money, are there actually any units here in the community that really are affordable? So we wanted to see, we looked through the property records and we did an analysis. And what we came up with is, well, first of all, you asked the difference, right? Sir? You asked about the incomes earlier. So area median for Miami-Dade is $51,008, and for Doral, the median income is $72,000. So there's a pretty big difference between the two. So we found 4,219 non-rental units. These would be units you could buy. So fee simple, like you could actually go buy a condo or a house. In Doral that are either occupied or unoccupied, so we didn't look at whether they were vacant, we just looked at all units. So we found over 4,000 of them that would be affordable for a household making up to 140% of the AMI, which is basically 72,000 and change, 72,000 a year. So if you looked at that and then said, okay, they probably could buy a house that's about 2.5 times their salary, then we looked at all the prices of housing in Doral and did a little analysis. And we got about 4,000 units we found there, which seems like a lot, but it's really not a lot. That's not a lot of units when you think about the entire city of Doral. We also looked at the higher number, the $72,000 median income, right? And we came up with 9,300 units. Same analysis, just trying to look how many units are out there in the community that somebody making $72,000 might be able to afford. And we came up with the 9,300 units. There's another assessment that the census does called cost burden. So 34% of your mortgage holders are cost burden, and that just basically means on a monthly basis your mortgage costs more than 30% of your income. It's just it's a somewhat simplistic analysis, but HUD uses it as a way to kind of look at the strain on people paying rent or mortgage. 57% of your rental households are cost burden, which means, again, 57% of the folks renting pay more than 30% of their income on rent. Now, that could be for a number of reasons. Could be because I'm young and I want to go spend extra money because I like to live in a cool place in Doral, and I'm willing to spend more money to do it because I don't have any responsibilities. That could be one way to do it. It could also mean a family wants to live in Doral and they're willing to because Doral's got great schools and they want to spend the extra money to do that. But it does speak to an issue and it's an indicator of an issue. So we didn't just look at that. We tried to look at different facets of cost. Yes, ma'am.
You may be going on to this in the next slide, but does that include the cost of transportation or is it
No.
the cost of housing?
This
That's the cost of housing.
excludes, this is just housing.
Yeah.
Yes, they, what's the rule of thumb for transportation, 45%?
45%.
Something like that? So they say between rent and transportation, 45% of your income? Yeah,
Which is a lot.
it is a lot. Well, yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. I can tell you that, but not at this moment. If you give, it may be on one of the boards. If not, I can look it up in the report, just to remind myself. I don't want to misquote myself. Yeah, absolutely. We do have that number though.
I just am interested to see.
Oh,
the
absolutely.
percentage
Mhm.
of Doral,
Mhm.
you know, what's
Right.
for the
Then we did a little bit of looking at some of your public employees in the area. So we looked at some salary rates for the county, we looked at fire department, we looked at teachers, we looked at the cities, and I put city planner up there just to make sure. Which, I mean, that seems a little high to me, but so we looked at all the occupations, so 33 of the 184 occupation categories. That just means the city has 184 different job titles. And that's from all the way at the bottom level to the top, right? So 33 of those positions have starting salaries that are less than about $34,000 a year. So that was just to point out that that's at that bottom range of what we would call workforce. So you've got a number of those positions that just don't even get in the game because they're only making 60% of the median income. We also looked at, like you were saying, we compared all these different salaries. These are midpoint salaries, which generally are when you've spent 10 to 15 years within a job. This is the salary you're talking about making, including your teachers. That's from Miami-Dade. And so you get an idea of what percent of AMI where they fall. And so what you see is what workforce can mean. One of the things it can mean is these folks. These people fit within that workforce category. So it's your teachers, your police, your firefighters, even your urban planners can fit within what that means. And I think that's important because people often ask, well, who's workforce? Well, it can mean people who work for your city and your county. That looks like that's the last thing I'm going to talk about. So what we're doing now is we're taking all this information, which I'll be glad to sit around and talk to you about, and look up your extra statistics. But we're taking any input we received tonight. We had stakeholder interviews back in August, which helped inform some of this as well. And we'll be doing another workshop towards the end once we develop an action plan. But our goal really is to develop an action plan that is simple, implementable, measurable. It's going to be very important for us to identify who we're targeting, how we're targeting, and how we're making progress over time. Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of great ideas out there for affordable housing, but they don't all work for Doral. They don't all work for the situation in Doral. And so it's our job to kind of whittle that down into some key implementation steps that Julian, the city manager, and city council can take and move forward with over time. So that's what we're doing is we'll be working on this plan for the next couple months, I think, pulling everything together, working with staff, and then we'll come back and we'll present to the city council for approval. And my understanding is that if and when it is approved, then you'd move on to making any changes to the current ordinance that may need to be made to kind of react to the plan. Is that a fair statement?